The day my father told me I was temporary in my own house, I was standing barefoot in the kitchen, holding a mug that said *limestone house* across the front in soft gray lettering. It was 7:12 in the morning. I remember the exact time because the sun was just cresting over the maples, and the light hit the copper sink in that golden way that makes everything look softer than it is. Ray Appleton didn't sit down. He didn't ask how I was. He just stood there in my doorway, jacket zipped halfway up, jaw tight, and said, "Lydia, we need to talk about transferring the deed. Derek's situation is critical. That word echoed in the kitchen like it had weight. And in that moment, something inside me went very, very still. If you've ever been the daughter who was expected to adjust, to bend, to give up your seat at the table because someone else needed it more, then you know that stillness. It's not calm, it's clarity. Welcome to her untold revenge. If you've ever built something in the shadows while someone else took the spotlight, this story is for you. I'm Lydia Appleton. I'm 33 now. I own a retreat in Vermont that books out almost a year in advance, but none of that is where this story starts. It starts with a kitchen in Connecticut and a father who believed his son was an investment and his daughter was a consolation prize. My mother, Laura, died when I was 12, breast cancer. 2 years of hospital rooms and plastic chairs and the smell of antiseptic that never quite leaves your memory. Derek was 15 then, old enough to drive soon, old enough to sit beside Dad and be the man of the house. I was the quiet one, the one who washed dishes without being asked, the one who packed her own lunches because Patricia's second wife liked to say I was so self-sufficient. She'd say it with this sugary voice, like it was praise, but what she meant was, * you don't require investment. * Patricia rearranged everything when she moved in. Furniture first, then traditions, then loyalties. Derek was the golden boy. Varsity football, big laugh, bigger dreams. Dad went to every game. Patricia clapped like she'd birthed him herself. I joined architecture club, built a model of falling waiter from scratch. Won first place. Nobody came to see it. You file those moments away. You tell yourself it's fine. You become limestone. Solid. Quiet.l. Ode to bearing. Years passed. I left for college, studied architecture, fell in love with restoration work-hold structures, forgotten places. Things that looked ordinary until you understood their bones. Funny how we're drawn to what we recognize. When Dad called that dinner the one where he divided his assets, I almost didn't go. Something in my gut said it wouldn't end well. But I went anyway. Because somewhere, some part of me still hoped. Derek got the Manhattan condo. Fully furnished. Balcony overlooking the park. I remember Patricia squeezing his arm like he'd won something. Then Dad slid a small envelope across the table to me. "Upstate Vermont," he said. "Needs work." Derek laughed. "You always liked projects, Lyd. It wasn't even mean in his mind. That's the part that stung. He genuinely believed he deserved more." I drove to Vermont alone the following weekend. The house sat on 5 acres of overgrown meadow, paint peeling, porch sagging, windows clouded with years of neglect. The air smelled like pine and damp earth, and when I pushed the front door open, it creaked like it had been waiting. It was a mess. Truly, no heat, pipes that wheezed like they had asthma. Boo. The beams, oh the beams, hand-hewn oak from the 1800s, stone foundation thicker than my arm span. It had history, it had weight, it had potential. And here's the thing nobody in my family knew. My mother had once told me, right before she passed, "Lydia, I left you something solid. When you're ready, you'll understand." At 30, I finally called Margaret Chenmom's old friend and estate attorney. Margaret invited me to her home in New Hampshire and poured tea like she had all the time in the world. Then she told me the truth. My mother bought that Vermont property herself. With inheritance money, she placed it in an irrevocable trust for me. It matured when I turned 30. It was never Dad's to give. When Margaret handed me the paperwork, I felt something shift in my chest. Not anger, not triumph, recognition. Mom saw this coming. Meanwhile, Derek was spiraling. The condo fees piled up, risky investments tanked. Patricia kept smoothing it over with phrases like, "He just needs a bridge." Dad drained savings accounts to keep him afloat. And then they started looking at my house differently. Not as a joke, as leverage. I renovated slowly at first, nights and weekends, then full-time. I poured every skill I had into it. I lived in one finished room while contractors worked around me. I sanded floors until my hands blistered. I learned the sound of Vermont rain on cedar shingles. I named it Limestone House. We opened quietly. Word spread louder than I expected. Women booked weekends away. Small retreats, writing workshops, grief circles. Something about the place felt grounded, like it held you steady. Architectural Digest featured it that summer. I cried in the pantry when the email came through, not because of the publicity, but because Mom had written in a letter I found tucked inside a wall, "Build something that holds people the way I held you." And I had. Then Derek's foreclosure notice hit. That's when Dad came to my kitchen at 7:12 a.m. "We'll reimburse you for renovations," he said. "Fair market rate. Derek can manage operations. It stays in the family. Das stays in the family." I looked around that kitchen. The shelves I installed. The copper sink I saved for. The long farmhouse table where strangers had cried and healed and laughed over soup I made from scratch. "You mean it comes back to you?" I said quietly. Patricia stepped forward then. She had that tight smile. "Don't be dramatic, Lydia. We're thinking long-term. Long-term had always meant Derek." They gave me 72 hours to reconsider. Boxes sat in the back of their rented truck like they were already packing my life up. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I called Margaret. She met me at Limestone House 2 days later with certified copies of everything. Trust documents. Deeds. Court filings from 2006 where Dad signed away any claim without reading carefully. On the morning they returned boxes ready, the first laid the paperwork on the porch table. I'll never forget Dad's face when he realized. "This was Laura's?" he whispered. "Yes," I said. Derek paced. Patricia fumed. "But legally?" They had nothing. Nothing except expectation. And expectation isn't ownership. They left with empty boxes. Derek lost the condo. Moved back in with Dad and Patricia. Instagram went silent. Patricia sent one text. "I hope you're satisfied." Asterisk satisfied isn't the word. Peaceful is closer. Because here's what I learned, and maybe you need to hear this too. People will always try to claim the finished version of what they dismissed in its beginning stages. They want the cathedral, not the quarry. But Limestone remembers. It remembers pressure. It remembers weight. It remembers who built it. I still run Limestone House. Sometimes, on quiet mornings, I sit on the porch with coffee and think about my mother drawing plans in her head before I was old enough to understand them. She didn't just leave me property. She left me proof. Proof that someone believed in my foundation long before I did. Dad has visited once. Booked a room like any other guest. We spoke politely. There are no grand reconciliations in this story. Just boundaries. Just truth. And honestly, that's enough. If this story felt familiar, if you've ever been the overlooked daughter, the steady one, the independent one who didn't need help, please know this. Being underestimated is not a weakness. It's an advantage. You get to build without interference. You get to surprise them. And sometimes you get to protect what was always yours. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated, subscribe to Her Untold Revenge. Share this with someone who needs the reminder that their foundation is stronger than anyone realizes. And remember, cathedrals are built quietly at first.